And now here's part 2 of our episode.
I'm curious as to why you chose that as a standout track. Primarily because, I mean, obviously it wasn't a single from the album. And also, I mean, I think when I tend to think of Madonna, I rarely think of her ballads, frankly. I tend to think more of her dance numbers or her pop songs, that sort of thing. This one was not on my radar until I had to listen to this album in full. So what makes this the standout for you?
So it makes it a standout for me. I picked it for the exact reason of everything you said, because I was like, look, like I could easily pick Deeper and Deeper, or Bye Bye Baby was probably what I was going to pick, or Rain, which is another ballad. But I was going to pick one of those, and then I'm like, no, bitch, you gotta pick. In this life, we are going to teach the children today. And so Madonna is not, and I will say this as someone who I think you get that I love her. That
a little bit.
I am fond of her just a bit.
Yeah,
she's not particularly not people aren't like, Madonna the vocalist. Like no one is at home going, Madonna the vocalist. Like we're just not. And this track in particular, you can hear, like nowadays they would have redone this track, and they would have surrounded her with backup singers, and they would, auto-tune the hell out of her. But all this track is her raw emotion for this song, who she wrote for Keith Haring and her dance teacher, Christopher Flynn, who both died of AIDS in 1990. This is her way of talking about the epidemic and talking about the people who she loved so deeply. Like Christopher Flynn, her dance teacher, she would not have been in New York if it wasn't for him. Like he influenced her so highly about, you have to go to New York. And so she did. And then Keith Haring was her best friend. And the thing that people don't really know, because what we do know about the early AIDS epidemic and celebrity is everybody thinks of Liz Taylor all the time and all the stuff that Liz Taylor did. And people don't think Madonna in the AIDS crisis, because Madonna never wanted it to be about her. And so she paid for Keith Haring's medical expenses. She paid for his funeral, but she didn't go to his funeral because she didn't want it to become about her. And the same thing, if you think she's getting divorced from Sean Penn, she gets divorced from Sean Penn in 89, September of 89. Keith and Christopher both die in 1990. So she's doing all this while in this relationship with this homophobic, bigoted man who's, no offense, I mean, Sean Penn's come a long way, baby. Like Virginia Slims. So she is losing all of her friends. You have to think, when she got to New York, it's late 70s. The AIDS epidemic is first diagnosed in the United States in 1981. And she's in New York, and these are all of her friends. She's with Keith Haring and Basquiat, and she dated Basquiat for a minute, hanging out with Andy Warhol and all this stuff, so these are her friends. These are the people, these are her chosen family. These are the people who accept her as she is, as being loud and intelligent, and allowed Madonna's light to shine, where in Michigan and anywhere else in the world, women weren't allowed to be as brazen as Madonna is. This recording gets me choked up because of how much pain she was in, and it's very rare that Madonna talks about struggle. Maybe the first time we hear her speak of struggle, and her struggle in particular, is when she won the Billboard Music Award for Woman of the Year. I think that's 2016. And she talked about a little bit about her struggle, about sexism and the stuff that she was facing, and then losing everybody, and how hard that was for her. And it really kind of makes me clutch my pearls a little bit, because it is her talking at the end could be seen a little bit cringe these days. And I get it, but it's also if you listen to her lyrics, she's in so much pain, and her vocals, she's barely she's so low. She's not doing anything fancy. She's not going up because she couldn't. And it's rare that we get to see that side of Madonna. I can't think of another time that we see this side of her, where we're actually getting to see anything that isn't bitch, I'm Madonna. I'm in pain. My friends should be able to love who they love. I want this to be over in my lifetime. And it's not, of course,
Right.
Cut to 30 years later, and, it's still an epidemic. It's still a pandemic.
Does she ever say anything? Has she ever said anything about feeling like she needed to bury that? Has she ever come out and said, yes, I am I am weak sometimes, but like if I were to show a shred of weakness, like
Yes.
this whole image, not image, because I mean, well, I guess it is an image because everything's an image. Whatever. I'm gonna restart that. My thought there, but like, had she ever said that she has had to consciously put that all away?
Yeah, that's I'll invite everybody to listen to that Billboard, her acceptance speech from the Billboard Music Awards, because she does. She says, that she's like, I couldn't, there was no space for me to have this pain. There's no space for me to experience my trauma and, have my feelings. And it's funny because of where we're at now as a society, and like us, like I'll use Lizzo as the best example. Is like Lizzo faces abuse every day online. People come for her and she comes back at them, and then of course all this stuff with the 2 dancers that are suing her, and all, like, it's all very public. So we're seeing a different side of celebrity because of social media. So I wonder if Madonna would be different these days. But back then, a woman showing weakness who wanted power was not the tea. That was not it.
Yeah.
And so, she does, like, she knows, she does comment on that a bit, that like this was the world she was living in and she just had to push forward. And she had Debbie Mazur was one of her closest friends from New York as well. Shout out to Debbie Mazur. And who looks like the very first Barbie, like every time I see Debbie Mazur, I'm like, you look like the very first Barbie. Like, with prototype. I know you weren't alive. Like, she's the prototype for Barbie. She didn't exist then, but I'm like, aren't you Barbie? She's the first Barbie. So it's interesting because we don't think of Madonna as having pain. But that's like saying tall people don't have feelings. Like, of course she has feelings. She's, that's one of my favorite memes ever. I never thought about it, that tall people get sad. And it's like, as a Muppet person, I'm like, tall people get sad? What?
Sure do.
But she like was human. She was a human, but because of who she wanted to be, in the image that she was cultivating, the strength she was trying to cultivate, the power she was trying to cultivate to control her own destiny, that she had to shove all that down. And she was like, and so people like Debbie Mazur got to see it and be with her and witness the pain.
I don't know if it is cringe, the spoken part at the end. I don't think it is, because especially, it lands for me. I think she hits the mark. And what's funny is I'm hearing, I don't know if you guys are hearing all this advertising for this documentary about We Are the World. Have you seen this out there?
I've seen a few ads. Yeah.
So there's like there's all these ads for how dramatic the process of writing We Are the World was, and all these stars in one room. And I imagine it was crazy, but like,
oh yeah.
I don't know if it was considered cringe at the time, but We Are the World is cringe. Like this,
it's so cringe.
We Are the World is cringe when you're trying to say, like, obliquely, you're trying to make some kind of statement, but it ends up just being a generality. Is kind of how I've always felt about We Are the World, and at least in this situation, it's so obvious what she's talking about. She's not really masking it. There's no names that are spoken, right? But you pretty much know she's talking about AIDS, and so it's and so that is the bravery, and that's what makes it not cringe for me in the way that We Are the World is cringe.
Oh gosh, and it's like, do they know it's Christmas time? Is also so. Do they even? It's like, come on, do they know it's Christmas?
Brutal.
It's like, maybe because Christianity is not the only religion. Why don't you shut up? Like,
maybe they don't celebrate it.
Maybe they don't celebrate it. What's wrong with you? Anyway, but I'm like, look at us. We're a pack of white artists doing things. As I sit here as a white lady. But yeah, so I don't think it's cringe. I think that what is hard is, like, it's not like vocal acrobatics, and that isn't what she does. Like, she just doesn't do vocal acrobatics. She doesn't have that I don't know. I don't want to say she doesn't have the capability. I'll just say it. She doesn't have the capability. Her talent lies in her ability. It's different. She writes. She can put her finger on the pulse of what's coming. Like, she doesn't get her first Grammy Award until we get to Ray of Light, which is a tremendous album as well. But even Ray of Light introduces electronica, and we have what we have today because Madonna did Ray of Light. There's a great article about that. Oh my God.
Listener, the look in Melissa's eye right now is so mischievous. It's just like there's this sparkle. There's a sparkle going on.
Well, we asked you. Well, I mean, we asked you to nominate Madonna albums specifically, but we did ask you to nominate perfect albums, and we did not define that word for you. So I'm curious to know what are your standards for perfection on this album? And I'm glad you mentioned Ray of Light, because I want to talk about that too. But I want to know like what makes this particular album perfect.
So in my eyes, a perfect album is a complete thought from start to finish, or a story, something that I can follow the artist's thought as to why this song comes next and why this song comes after that song, and why you end here and why you began there, and what is the thematic thing, like Blue by
Joni Mitchell.
Oh God. Joni Mitchell, thank you.
Yep.
I almost said Judy Collins. Joni Mitchell is one of those that I think
Close.
is a very complete thought from start to finish. Fleetwood Mac's Rumors. Fleetwood Mac's Rumors, like, it's not ordered correctly, but which I agree.
This is just what we said.
This is just what we said.
It's a complete thought if we just change it around a little bit.
Yeah, a little
but this, like, I think Erotica is a complete thought. It starts with lust and pain and everything it tells you. Like it starts with that, my name is Dita. I'll be your mistress tonight. Let's do this. Like, I'm going to let you know how this goes. Love is pain. Love is hot. Love is desire and sex and passion, but it's pain too. And so pain can be physical pain. It can be emotional pain. And she lays it all out in Erotica. And we go from Erotica to Fever, which is a jazz standard, like what? And then,
so
and then
funny.
like
yeah.
it's so random. And then it's Fever to is it Bye Bye Baby is next, maybe? I don't know what I think so. Like, I mean, I listened to it on repeat in 1992 through 1994, so I should know it.
Yeah.
But then, like, if you follow it all along, and then we end in Secret Garden, I think, is the last track. And in some CDs you have a reprise of Erotica, which I don't mind, because it means the cycle continues. And so I think it's a perfect album because it starts with, I'm going to talk about love, and in all of its dirty, dark, beautiful, sexy, hot, but painful and enjoyable things. And it's heartbreak and it's love, and it's heartbreak and it's love. And it all begins in my crotch, the Secret Garden, which is
the
like,
Secret Garden.
The petal that isn't torn, my friend. And so that's why I think it's the perfect album.
I would like, so as mentioning that, I do have one very specific question for you regarding this album. And I feel like because of what you just said, this is the perfect time to ask it. I think there is one line on this album that I find very cringe, and I want to know your response to it. On the song called Where Life Begins, she makes a reference to how do I'll just say it. She makes a reference to compares cunnilingus to eating Kentucky Fried Chicken by saying Colonel Sanders said it best, finger licking good.
Yes.
No, it's not like any sort of disgust or anything like that. Like, I'm not, it's not that. It's that I'm kind of like, really? That's what you're going to use to describe it? What are your thoughts on this?
I'm going to actually agree with you, because I remember listening to it then, and I was like, oh my God, this album. Oh my God. Then we got to that, and I was like, what? It's like everything else is kind of very like specific and curated and beautiful. Like Bad Girl is one of my favorite songs on this, like the Drunk by Six, Kissing Some Kind Stranger's Lips, Smoke Too Many Cigarettes Today, I'm Not Happy When I Act This Way. Like, even that piece of love, like when you're like just doing crazy shit, and then you get to that.
I don't know, because the rest of the, like, I don't know if it does technically qualify as a metaphor. It's just sort of like a clever way of talking about oral sex, which I think the rest of the song is clever. And then I get to that line and I'm like, oh, you ruined it. Like, you know.
Yeah. I will say, like, Madonna fancies herself to be hilarious. And there are some, I'll just say that, like, and that's what everybody says who knows her. I do not personally know her. I would love to know her, but people say she's hilarious.
She's hilarious in a league of their own. I will say that.
She is
yes.
great,
and like her and like Rosie O'Donnell have this great friendship, and and you watch like videos of them, and they're like this, like kind of like Laurel and Hardy, like kind of wacky duo. And I feel like Madonna likes a bad pun, and that's as bad as they come, you know?
It is.
It's just like, it's not even punny. Hey! Like, she just, and I like puns. I do love a pun, but like, it's like a bad dad joke. It really is. Like a bad sex dad joke. it's like just like finger licking good. Like, really,
Yeah.
Madonna?
Yeah.
Really? So I hear
Like,
you. I
mhm.
witnessed that, and I agree.
Okay, cool.
I think I really agree with the take that it's a complete thought, because it is very consistent throughout. You know, there's not a lot musically that sticks out, I guess, and it's not to say that it's monotonous or anything like that. I would just say that it's very consistent musically over the course of the thing. And then it's sort of lyrically where you get the shades and you get that extra layer of complexity, which is awesome. Why do you feel like this album's legacy is that it is considered by many her worst album?
Because at the time it was criticized for being, the critics of the time, and there's lots of articles about it you can find all over
Yeah.
the internet, but especially because there was the 30th anniversary this year, or
Yeah.
2 years ago, or 2022. And so there was all kinds of like pontification that it was, because it was about sex and she was a woman and there was nothing this explicit, and because the sex book came out at the same time, so critics panned it.
Yeah.
But on second glance, it shouldn't have been panned. It shouldn't have been
Right.
panned. Like it's a really, artistically speaking, if you look at her lyrics and yes, shit's dance music, she's saying something specific that needed to be said so that other people could say wet ass pussy in years to come.
True.
So yeah, so I do think that, like, I think the legacy of it is that the critics were wrong, and people see that these days. But first, we have to remind them that it exists, and it is a wonderful capsule of what was happening musically in 1992. That like deep, like house music, that vibe that's in the beat, and like Kool and the Gang's Jungle Boogie is the bass in Erotica, and like it's just like there's something musically that was changing. Is what was happening in the raves and the dance clubs, because that's what Madonna's always doing. Whatever's happening in the dance clubs is happening on Madonna's album.
I want to shout out a family member of mine who is associated with who has an association with this album and era of Madonna in our family history. My mom's cousin, my mom's first cousin, so I guess that makes her my first cousin once removed, Kathy.
Yes.
You know, I don't know if this is, I don't know if I don't want to be sharing too much, but essentially I think Kathy had this book back in the day, if I'm remembering correctly. So Kathy, I'm going to share this episode with you, and I hope I'm not sharing too much. I didn't okay this with you beforehand, but essentially she had the book, and it was a big brouhaha in the family. And it's cool because you see that as a touch point with people in your family, like, oh, here's this piece of art that was controversial, and like, I'm like, oh, Kathy liked that? That's really cool. And it kind of makes you think about things relative to like what is normal in your tribe and what is considered, what are the ways in which you differentiate yourself from it. So it was cool to kind of look at this historically in that context. And I wonder if the book wouldn't have come out at the same time, even if there would have been like a few months difference, if there would have been the difference in reception to the album itself.
I agree with that. That's a really great point. And it's like, if you think about it, like obviously I have the sex book. Obviously I still have my copy.
In the bag.
Yeah, it's in the bag. I still have it. I opened it, but I have it. And I like sliced it open with a razor blade so I could pull it anyway. And I also have a copy that someone gave me many years later that's from the French copy. And if you think about, like, this is before the internet, and people in middle America are learning about kink and learning about differing relationships in a different way than anybody, like, because it wasn't like, at the local library, I guess, but not, there wasn't access to stuff like we have today. So this is like, so Kathy, your first cousin once removed,
shout out
is
Kathy.
getting introduced to stuff that maybe her little, like, where
middle of Illinois.
The middle of Illinois did not have. It didn't have this in the middle of it. So, you know what I mean? Like, it's very fascinating what she did with this album, was to like let a bunch of folks know who were like, oh, you know.
I also want to
who found out reading this book? Who found out? Like,
exactly
that blanket. Who found out?
I also want to give you some points for that thing you say about the kind of difference in her vocal. I'll say, well, let's just say 3,000 points for that thing about her not being a vocalist. Like it's really not her core strength. And I also think that the fact that she cannot be this atmospheric, otherworldly vocalist, still be the immense global pop star that she is, enables somebody like Taylor Swift nowadays to be able to have the career that she has built, where her core, this is, obviously my assessment of it, my biased assessment of it, that her core thing is the songwriting, less so than her vocal ability. So I just think that's I hadn't really made that connection before. That it's the same sort of case for Madonna, but I think there's connective tissue there.
But before we close this out, real quick, I'm curious to know favorite Madonna album and favorite Madonna song ever, just overall.
Yeah,
you got to go down to one album, one song. Don't have to be on the same thing.
Okay, I'll say Confessions on a Dance Floor is my favorite album, and my favorite song is Express Yourself, because duh. Don't go for second best. Don't go for second best.
Yeah.
Put your love to the test.
I'm a Ray of Light gay myself. Drowned World being a fantastic song. But I think my favorite song, just because I don't know why I love it so much, I love the song Borderline so much. Like,
that's a good song.
It's so fun. And I don't know. I dig it. Anyway.
Drowned World is definitely in my top 10. That's such a beautiful song. I love that song.
And her voice sounds really good on Ray of Light too. Didn't she go for more lessons or something around that to really prep for that?
She met with a different coach or something, and she's it's Kabbalah Madonna, and she's like much different. She's just like, and she had her babies, and so she's like in this different like headspace where it was really about life and celebrating life, and we're coming out of like celebrating sex and going into celebrating life. So Ray of Light.
I remember Kabbalah Madonna. That was an era. Yeah. Okay, well, I'm gonna say I love Vogue. Maybe I'm still new to it. I can go basic, and it's just those synths. Those synths have aged really, really well. It's insane. I think we should tally up the points here, Melissa. You've built one hell of a case, and it's really an honor to have somebody makes such a enthusiastic case for such a deserving member of the Pantheon. I'll show my cards a little bit, but to go back through the points that we got you, we gave you 3,000 points most recently for that was I believe for talking about how she doesn't need to be a great vocalist to just still have the power that she has. I gave you 50,000 points for I didn't mention this before, but 50,000 points for that thing about not making it about her being a really core value to the work she did with AIDS and her friends, and I think that's a really beautiful, important thing for somebody of her stature. 1,000,000 points for Madonna sticking around. 12,000 points for you having seen her 12 times now, and soon to be 13, right? That'll be in Pittsburgh, right? 9,000 points for saying music is your higher power. That's the role it plays in your life. Hell yeah. 10,000 points for you being a tall amalgamated Muppet, which is also what I am, I think, very often. 6,000 points for supporting your creative habit through your realtor work, because also moving in that sort of direction in my life. So kudos to that. And then you gave me a 7 out of 10. You gave me a 7 out of 10 for my recap, which I think that deserved a 7 out of 10. That was exactly where it should have landed. All that put together is a pretty strong case, but if you've listened to the podcast before, then it all comes down to the decision of one man. He rules with an iron fist around here at the Pantheon, and he is our authority and the final word, as they say. So, Michael, I put it to you, my friend. Is Madonna's Erotica a perfect album? Does it go to 11?
I came into this conversation, from when you sent us the email, I was like, what? Erotica? What? And I was a bit confused, but I think you have made a very solid case for this, and I'm happy to add Madonna's Erotica to this one goes to 11 Pantheon.
Hey! Woo! She did it! Yay!
She did it. We did it, Joe.
It's like going up against rumors and things like that. I don't know, but I'm like, no, stand by your guts.
I'm glad you did. Yes, you did.
All right. Well, there's one more thing we have to do, Tyler. We have to share with our lovely guest what we've chosen as our standout track off this album.
And we've chosen Deeper and Deeper.
Deeper and Deeper. Yes.
Oh, you picked a good one. You picked a real good one.
Well, so To
Michael.
like pull
Explain why.
the curtain. Yeah, to pull back the curtain. We've said this before. Like usually there's some sort of conversation on Slack that happens before recording, and sometimes there have been many times where I've texted Tyler to be like, the standout track is this period, and like there's no conversation for this one. It was either Deeper and Deeper or Rain, because Rain. I mean, Rain actually doesn't sound like anything else on this album, to be honest. No. And in some ways, it also feels like, I'm going to say it, feels like the most well-produced song on the album, and it feels like it could go on any one of her albums, frankly.
I agree.
But we're going with Deeper and Deeper, primarily because I feel like it has a lot of Madonna-isms in it. And, I mean, also, if I'm not mistaken, the first line is quoting The Sound of Music. And then, which crazy. And then also there's a little, like, snippet of Vogue within it. So I just feel like it's so capital M Madonna trademark. There you go. So I don't know. What were your thoughts on this track, Tyler?
It's a heartbeat track, and I think a lot of times, I think it's a good anchor for the album. Like you kind of have this sort of fulcrum. I know I said that there weren't many that kind of stuck out musically, but I think this one, just because there's such a satisfying drive to it, and for all the reasons that Michael said, it kind of made sense as a great song to play us out on, and to hopefully blast people off into another Madonna renaissance for their own relationship with this wonderful artist. So I think it was the right choice.
Very good choice. Deeper and Deeper is an excellent choice. Bravo.
Melissa, it was great to meet you. This has been a real treat, and very, very excited for you to see her again and again and again, just as many times as you possibly can.
Yeah, as she goes on tour, I'm there. Unless, like I'm being held down by straps having a good time. Hey! I'll be there. I will be there. Thank you. This was such a joy, and thank you for allowing me to geek out about Madonna for an hour. It's really my passion. It's like one of my many passions is Madonna.
I'm so glad we had you on. Yeah, this is great. Well, everyone, that's all for this week. So hope you enjoyed our conversation, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.